what I'd love if Batman from the Nolan movies met Rorschach from Watchmen.
I'm not wearing hockey pads. Possibly homosexual. Must remember to investigate further.
Hello and welcome to my review of Zack Snyder's adaptation of Watchmen, starring Jackie Earle Haley, Jeffrey Dean Morgan, Patrick Wilson, and Billy Crudup. Watchmen is a very complex film to try to narrow down to a plot structure, but essentially what it's about is it centers on this murder of this guy who is a former war hero slash superhero slash anti-hero named the Comedian. And it takes place in an alternative 1985, still the Cold War. However, this 1985 is filled with these people who were at one time called the Watchmen, who were these superheroes who are now outlawed. And it centers on essentially the lives of these characters and how they're dealing with not only the impending nuclear war, but their identity crisis. And within this group of Watchmen, you've got a ton of crazy characters. You got Patrick Wilson as Night Owl, who's just kind of a guy who's trying to settle back into his identity. Marilyn Ackerman as the Silk Spectre. Billy Crudup as Dr. Manhattan, who is a former physicist who turns into this just blue god figure after an accident, who essentially is America's linchpin into not causing the Cold War. And finally, you have the ever badass Rorschach, played by Jackie Earle Haley, who's the last of the masks who still kind of runs around and takes care of business. He's as badass as you can imagine, hates humanity, hates criminality, and wants it all broken and killed, essentially. And he's just a loose cannon who will go off at anything. Now, I come from a somewhat knowledgeable place for this movie because I've read some of the Allan Moore, Dave Gibbons novel that this movie is based on. Not all of it, but I have a sense of what the graphic novel was, kind of the style of it. And I gotta say, this movie is as mixed of a bag as you can get. There's a lot of great elements in this movie, but they never quite feel right. There are two main great components to this movie. We got some of the performances in this movie are just stellar. First off, we got Jeffrey Dean Morgan as the Comedian is just great as this kind of cynical, evil anti-hero guy who's kind of the centerpiece of the conflict in this movie. Patrick Wilson is decent. Billy Crudup is good as Dr. Manhattan. But the real person here who shines, and I kind of went into a big description of him just now, is Jackie Earle Haley as Rorschach. I think that this guy should have received an Oscar nomination for this performance here. He's incredible. Just like this chameleon-like performance of blending into this character that's just the manifestation of rage. And just that he's like a spirit of anger and rage. And it's beautiful. I loved Rorschach. I thought that was the best thing that this movie had going for it, was that Rorschach was just perfect. And another thing, Zack Snyder, who's the director of this film, he also did 300, which was pretty good, and the rather lackluster Sucker Punch. Yeah. But anyway, he is just a visual master. This guy can make any shot just look beautiful. He makes it pop in a way that most directors really don't. He just has this essence. He makes sure every shot just has this just perfect feeling to it. There's not a wasted shot in this film. Everyone has a purpose. It's like a comic book, how each panel is drawn to represent something specific. And I love that style from Zack Snyder. However, that being said, that also has a negative component, Zack Snyder's style. This movie is far too glossy. It really is. It's far too clean. It's far too kind of pristine with the gorgeous colors and all that. This movie really needed a person who was going to make this as gritty and dirty and nasty as they possibly could. And Zack Snyder attempts this with his just brutality, because that's one thing that man does not shy away from, is showing someone get killed in a brutal way. And while he does that, the whole movie just feels very safe. You feel very removed and very like, I'm in my warm, comfy room watching all this horrible stuff going on. This graphic novel really needed a director to throw you into the world of Watchmen and not just have you watching it as if you were watching a painting. And I feel like Zack Snyder does the latter. He does a fantastic job of painting said painting. I just think he was the wrong choice for this movie. Also, he makes some awkward choices in terms of music, and there's quite possibly the most awkward sex scene ever filmed in this movie. I'm not saying that just because, like, it's just really awkward. Not only the music they use, but just you can tell neither actor is really into it. It's just kind of weird. Also, a couple of the performances in this movie just weren't quite as good as they could have been. I'm mainly talking about the Silk Spectres, Malin Ackerman and Carla Gugino. Just not great. Just a little bland to me. Overall, Watchmen is a well-made movie that was made wrong. If that makes any sense. It just feels like a movie that has the wrong parts, and those parts fit together well. It's good entertainment. It's just not quite as good as it could have been. However, it does have a fantastic ending. The ending of this movie kicks ass, great performances, and it is an entertaining movie, and it's nearly 3 hours long, and you never feel it. So that's saying quite a bit. And for that, I'm going to give Watchmen 3 stars out of 4. It's good, but not great. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, you can subscribe, comment, tell me what you thought of the movie, or request something for me to review. And until next time, I'm Movie Kid Mike, making sure your time is worth your money.